and the Regulatory Affairs and Federal Management Subcommittee. Hope it's a practice we will continue. I think it makes a lot of sense. PSI, which is the investigative subcommittee, has issued a report today that's of great importance in ensuring Americans can have a voice in federal regulations. So I think it's appropriate that we have a combined hearing. I want to welcome Chairman James Lankford and Ranking Member Kirsten Sinema. They are on the Regulatory Affairs Subcommittee. With regard to PSI, the ranking member is Tom Carper. He was looking forward to this hearing. He and his staff were very engaged in the report. He is unable to be here because he's in Delaware this morning attending a funeral for a very close friend of his. He sends his regrets to our witnesses, and he asks that I submit his opening statement for the record, which I'll do now without objection. As he also, by the way, submitted plenty of questions that I think Senator Sinema and I will both be asking to be sure that his voice is heard in this hearing. As members of a free and open democracy, it's critical that American citizens be able to influence and inform the laws and regulations that govern them. I think we all agree with that. Whether agencies are setting guidelines on the safety of food we eat, regulating the emission standards of the cars we drive, or adjusting the fees we pay to visit our national parks, the agency rulemaking process has a big impact on Americans' lives. That's why over 70 years ago, the United States Congress gave the American people the ability to comment directly to federal agencies on proposed rules so agencies would consider the views of the people who will be most directly affected by them. When that system is working well, government agencies can get constructive feedback before they finalize their rules. But more importantly, it gives the rulemaking process the greater transparency the public deserves and lets Americans have their say. With the rise of the Internet over the past few decades, Congress aimed to modernize that commenting process. In 2002, we passed a law requiring the federal commenting system to be put online with a goal of giving more Americans an easier way to have a voice. That resulted in the platform regulations.gov and other agency platforms to accept comments. It was a good idea. The Americans should be able to communicate easily with their government about the issues that affect them. But what we found here at the Permanent Subcommittee is that, to be frank, we got complacent. Over the years, across both Republican and Democratic administrations, these systems have become outdated and wide open to abuse. What's worse, right now there's no game plan in Congress or in the agencies for how we can correct this moving forward. Many of these problems are not new. As some witnesses know well, GAO issued a report back in 2003 noting that it was difficult to search regulations.gov and that proposed rules and other documents are not posted using consistent terminology. These were similar issues to those raised by the Administrative Conference, which is the federal body that offers improvements to the administrative process, in its December 2018 report. Regarding that same GAO report, by the way, back in 2003, former Senator Joe Lieberman noted that the GAO had found EPA had made the least progress of all major regulatory agencies in using regulations.gov, which, he said, quote, raises questions about why EPA was the designated lead agency for the administration's e-rulemaking initiative, end quote. He may have been prescient. Regulations.gov was transferred from EPA to the GSA only 24 days ago. So it took a while, but it's happened. And that's, again, one reason it's hopeful to me that we may have some changes, and it's an appropriate time for us to have this hearing. The report that Senator Carper and I put out today should be a wake-up call to all of us, in the agencies and here in Congress. It shows just how broken these commenting systems have become. Just to name a few examples in our report, thousands of comments submitted under stolen identities with no recourse for the identity theft victim to remove the comment from the system. Comments posted by dead people, including Elvis Presley, Richard Nixon, and many others. Comments containing the entire text of the 1,200 and 225-page novel War and Peace. Comments containing threats of violence against government officials, and comments with excessive profanity. For one notable rulemaking relating to the repeal of net neutrality, the FCC comment system contained 17,482 F-words, a record. What's really ironic is that the FCC is the agency that polices our television and radio airways, of course, and they're the ones who fine broadcasters thousands of dollars for airing profanity. But now that same type of content, profanity, sits on their own comment platform. But that's just part of the broader problem the FCC has had with their comment system. Most of the comments on the FCC platform are just noise. that do not advance the rulemaking process. That includes 500,000 comments traced to Russian email addresses. Let me repeat that, 500,000 comments traced to Russian email addresses. On top of that, nearly 8 million comments came from email domains associated with fakemailgenerator.com. 8 million. Even though these problems have been clear since at least 2017, the FCC has not taken steps to address them. The Wall Street Journal found that in the same 2017 FCC proceeding, in a random sample of 2,757 comments, 72% of respondents they surveyed had not submitted the comments that were posted under their names. This was a Wall Street Journal investigation showing that 72% of the time respondents said, that wasn't my comment. The Pew Research Center analyzed the 24 million comments the FCC received with this rulemaking and found that only about 6% of all the comments were individual, unique comments. The other 94% were submitted multiple times, in some cases hundreds of thousands of times. Pew also found that some commentators posted computer viruses as comments, and the FCC left those comments on its platforms. Pew said that meant that members of the public trying to review those comments would end up having their computers infected by malware on a government site. An FCC commissioner we interviewed for our report confirmed this finding. While the FCC has its own comment platform, the rest of the government uses regulations.gov, which is run by a committee led by the General Services Administration and the Office of Management and Budget. But just like the FCC system, regulations.gov has been abused and overrun with spam. We repeatedly found comments posted on regulations.gov using stolen identities. When we followed up with this, with the dozen agencies that use regulations.gov, we found none of them reported taking steps to prevent comments from being posted under stolen identities. None of them. In fact, only the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, FCTC, reported that it flagged comments posted under false identities for law enforcement. Part of the problem is that right now, each agency uses regulations.gov has its own policies regarding whether to remove or redact a comment, so there's currently no consistent guidelines for removing abusive or spam comments from the site. This needs to change. The notice and comment process is a crucial part of our regulatory system, and it should function with integrity and consistency. At its best, the comment period allows everyday Americans to be heard by their government, ensures that agencies write rules based on the best information possible, and helps inspire public confidence in the rulemaking process. At its worst, clogging the system with unrelated, false, and profane comments keeps legitimate comments from being heard and misleads the public and sometimes the agencies regarding the public sentiment about a proposed rule. We have to be better than that to ensure that a thoughtful, real comment is not lost like a needle in a haystack. We're not here to point fingers for letting this happen. As I said earlier, this is an issue where both parties in Congress and the past 3 administrations have dropped the ball over the years. My hope instead is that this hearing will be the start of a serious bipartisan conversation about improving these systems. And I hope to work with all of the witnesses here and my colleagues on this panel to help build from the report's findings to produce legislative solutions to some of these problems. Again, I appreciate the fact that the Subcommittee on Regulatory Affairs and Federal Management is here, and I'd now like to ask the chairman of that subcommittee, Senator James Lankford, for his opening statement.